going on, YouTube? Today I'm bringing you a special episode of how to stop casting the club, and it can be solved in as simple as using a driver shaft without a head on it. Here's how you can actually stop casting with an empty driver shaft. I got a couple drills for you to go through. Let's get into it. Okay, so typically speaking, you don't want to swing an empty golf shaft with two hands. There's not enough end weight on it, so it's not going to end up being good, and it's going to be very difficult on your body and not feel good at all. So we're not doing that today. We're actually swinging one-handed. Now, casting motion is definitely when you start throwing the club over the top versus dropping the club into the slot. How that happens for a lot of people is by ineffectively using their shoulders and both of their arms. Now, if you're swinging this, and I have a little PRGR set up here, head to thespeedtoke.com because you can purchase yours today too. That'll help read your club speeds and you can see how effectively you're actually doing these techniques. With that being said, a normal casting swing with one arm will look like this. And if that's you, you need to cut it out. It may have looked nice, but one thing you'll notice is that my shoulders move very horizontally versus more vertically. So it feels really, really good to swing like that when you're swinging with one arm. That's why a lot of people, when they're training club speed and they start trying to build club speed with one arm, they end up throwing the club over the top once they get back to their driver because they're reinforcing poor technique. Again, they're throwing this club over the top because it feels so good and it's so fast and efficient. Now, that swing was 153 miles an hour. You can step on it while swinging from the outside too. It feels fast and efficient. That was 172 miles an hour. But you don't want that with your right arm. You don't want to be a right arm dominant golfer by throwing it over the top. That's only going to lead to bad technique. So what you need to be doing instead is focusing on having a more passive right arm. What that looks like is more dropping it in the slot and bringing it from the inside part of the golf ball very softly, smoothly, and efficiently. Pick that up. Anyways, it looks a lot more like this. Now, it feels super, super weird. It doesn't feel like I can have a lot of speed on that. That was 135 miles an hour. I'll try to get after this one, but doing it the correct way. Very difficult to be fast. It was 144 miles an hour. So 30 mile per hour difference doing correct technique versus incorrect technique. But when you transfer over to the driver, doing technique like that with your right arm will actually increase your driver speed because you're doing it efficiently. So remember, we're trying to work on dropping the club in the slot, having a little bit more passive of a right arm versus a super explosive and downward angle, throwing it over the top right arm. Looks a lot like this. Good technique, bad technique. You can see a difference in the way my left shoulder moves. So now we need to talk about what the left arm is doing in the golf swing. The left arm needs to start working a little bit less passively and a little bit more proactively. So in this case, we just talked about we're throwing it over the top. We're not doing that. We're trying to get the right arm just to coast the zone. The left arm has to actually be the lead. How you can do this is by working your left shoulder more back and upwards versus horizontally rotating. So a bad technique, if both arms were attached and we're throwing it over the top here, the left arm would look like this. Down and around. Down and around. We're not looking for that technique. We're looking for the left shoulder becoming up and back. So what that looks like with just the left arm is this. And you can see instantly how much quicker that's moving. I'm going to show you one more time the bad technique, then the good technique, and we're going to get both on the radar. Bad technique is 155 miles per hour. Good technique. You can see how much more efficient and fast that is. It didn't even read it, but that's okay. It felt way better. And honestly, these are the things you have to do is start separating your right arm from your left arm, because when they're working together, one arm is going to end up being more dominant. And especially if you used to play baseball, if you're some kind of athlete that used other rackets, you're going to be more right arm dominant. And it's going to be very difficult for you to stop casting it and start getting that right arm to be a little bit more passive through the zone. Using an empty golf shaft is a perfect tool so that you can actually do that, start hitting longer drives, and start hitting them straighter. This is how an empty golf shaft can be so effective in helping you to become a better golfer. You guys got to start thinking outside of the box and stop always using your driver to hit your driver better. Different tools like this, where you're starting to get a little bit more creative and you're starting to separate your left from your right side so that you can implement technique work that's going to transition into your driver, is an awesome way to actually improving technique. There are tons of ways and different applications you can use an empty golf shaft. This is just one of them, but give it a try. Start swinging your right arm a little bit more passive and your left arm a little bit more active.